two questions I had in my mind. Will it really lead to peace? I want an answer, because I also feel something could have been done which was necessary for ensuring peace, but I have my doubts. Second question is, can the judgment be implemented in toto? Legal expert, our Anupam, I think, would like to shed light on this thing.
Right, Nuruzaman.
Yeah.
Anupam, your reaction to what Satyapal Jain has said and what Nuruzaman has said.
May I point out, and what Satyapal Jain has said confirms this apprehension. The greatest damage that today's judgment of the Allahabad High Court does is to wipe out the stain and the stigma of the demolition of 1992. Everything that the protagonists of the Ayodhya movement did, led by Lal Krishna Advani, the campaign against Nehruvian so-called pseudo-secularism, which was the ideological packaging of the movement which culminated in the demolition, with one stroke of the judicial pen has been undone, that has been vindicated. All they had said in support of the movement, the ideological, intellectual, even the ethical premises of the movement culminating in the demolition, now has, as Satyapal Jain very rightly put it from his own perverse point of view, the stamp of judicial approval.
Justice Gariwal?
Well, you see, we should have moved ahead. Now in 2010, India is emerging as an economic power of some consequence. We should have moved ahead from the past disputes, because there are so many other disputes that can crop up now. There are so many other
even this dispute is going to move to the second
this is going to
stage
on
now.
the basis of this, you might have, I believe in Mathura and I believe in Banaras, there are certain temples which are alleged to have been demolished to construct mosques. So what is going to be the
all that issue
situation
will
there?
come up. Governor, before we move on, a quick reaction from you.
Basically, we have not sorted out any problem as yet. Its wisdom is there that they try to divide into three. But the kind of premise they have taken, see, there is no one standard text of Ramayana, there is no one standard text of Mahabharata in this country. There are no archaeological evidences to that, and still we have faith. Okay, fine. How long you can govern the country by sheer faith?
But here at least there is an effort at reconciliation. That's the
okay. Let's see what the results are.
Okay. Mr. Siddiqui, your reaction to what Satyapal Jain has just said.
Coming to the question raised by Mr. Nuruzaman, whether the peace will be there, also linking with the Mr. Satyapal Jain's statement. I think for the time being we have bought some time to remain peaceful because of the efforts made by various political parties, governments. In future, whether this issue and assertion by Mr. Jain or likewise people who are trying to claim the property, even the Muslims reacting to a situation where they will say that we have been totally, our stand has been negated, this will lead to a problem.
See, the kind of assertion which Mr. Jain had posed today.
And we also hear that at least in some places some people kind of celebrate it. It's very unfortunate, and there's nothing to celebrate
very
like
clear,
this. So I hope there is no reaction.
A very clear directive is required on the part of the governments and the political parties to whichever state they are ruling to maintain peace. And the police has to be on its toes.
But not only peace, I think any kind of reaction, violence or even celebration, I think is something which needs to be.
That will lead to problems. That can
now let's hear what Professor M.M. Puri, former Vice Chancellor of Punjab University, and he's a professor, a student of political science. He calls today's decision of Allahabad High Court wise, which is in line with the ethos of our country. The decision, he said, is a perfect one and couldn't have been better.
The verdict on Babri Masjid has been pronounced. We have with us Dr. M.M. Puri, a prominent academician and former Vice Chancellor of Punjab University. We have his views on the judgment. Dr. Puri, how do you see this judgment?
I think it's a very, not only a fortunate but a very wise decision, perfectly in keeping with the ethos of the country. You see, it is accommodative without losing the merits of the various parties. It has somehow brought about an accommodation which is acceptable to all and has far-reaching consequences. It will subdue the whatever excitement there might have been in certain sections.
Dr. Saab, do you think that there could be something better than this judgment?
Well, offhand, I cannot say that. I haven't seen the judgment, but it doesn't seem so. What could be better than a partisan, or I wouldn't say partisan, a judgment that favored one side and to the disappointment of the other side? That in no way would have been better. In fact, this is just perfect.
Dr. Saab, during this case, ASI has also took out a report and they have also talked about it. How do you see that report?
I haven't seen the report, but ASI has provided solid substantiation to the viewpoint that there did exist a structure. Whether that structure was demolished or fell into disuse, or somehow the new structure came about in the vicinity, that can probably, they would know. But it seems whatever happened was in keeping with a historical process. And history moves, generations change, the environment changes. If there are certain structural changes that came about in the environment, they were acceptable to the people, and they became the part of the rhythm of life that the people had in these parts, and that rhythm has not been disturbed. This judgment in fact reaffirms that this is the right way to go about.
So Dr. Puri is of the opinion that this is probably one of the best judgments in the country, and this will also help in mulling down the sentiments of the people involved in the litigation and also from the other religions. Cameraman Satbir Jandli, this is Sanjay Mehta, Day and Night News, Chandigarh.
Well, that was Professor M.M. Puri. Now, I'm not sure how many people really agree with him. We have spoken to some of the people, and let's see what the people in the city have to say on the verdict.
तो ये अच्छा डिसीजन है, इससे दंगे फसाद भी नहीं होंगे, क्योंकि अगर किसी एक के फेवर में भी जाता है ये डिसीजन, या हिंदू के या फिर मुस्लिम के, तो काफ़ी ज़्यादा दंगे फसाद होते और जान मान की काफ़ी हानि होती.
ये एक बहुत ही अच्छा स्टेप है जिसके मेरे अकॉर्डिंगली ये जो देश की उन्नति है उसमें एक बहुत बड़ा स्टेप है.
जो आज ये डिसीजन सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने लिया है, ये दोनों के हित में लिया है. इससे जो अयोध्या में दंगे फसाद नहीं होंगे सर. अब के बाद
मेरे अकॉर्डिंगली जो ये निर्णय लिया गया है तो ये बिल्कुल सही है, क्योंकि भगवान तो अगर देखा जाए एक है हमारी नज़र में, चाहे वो हिंदू हो या मुसलमान.
Well, incidentally, the people we've spoken to, I think most of them belong to Chandigarh, and all of them seem to be welcoming the decision. Nuruzzaman, does this surprise you?
Yeah, actually, we should go to people like in UP or in Delhi. You'll get a different kind of view. And actually, these people are perhaps not aware that Sunni Waqf Board is going to appeal against the judgment to the Supreme Court. So all that we say that this will happen, that will happen, I don't find any...
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not completely representative of the entire country, the entire nation, or possibly not even the entire region. I think I agree with you there.
Because here we don't have that problem actually. Once you reach Delhi and beyond, you have that problem which was the reason why this dispute kept on prolonging, and why this problem. Here too, it's an entirely different situation.
Right. Thank you very much. Now, Anupam, Professor Puri talked about the Archaeological Survey of India. Now, I believe in 2002, the High Court had asked the Archaeological Survey of India to get into it, excavate the site and give their findings. And they gave their finding that possibly there are features of a 10th century North Indian temple at the site.
In 2003, a detailed order was passed by the full bench as it was then constituted, which invited opposition not only from the Sunni Waqf Board, but a whole body of progressive professional opinion. Irfan Habib, for instance, and other archaeologists. Speaking for myself, I agree that in principle, archaeological excavation can unravel important evidence in disputes of this kind. And this has been done the world over. So I do not agree with secular opinion or progressive opinion which is per se opposed to excavation. That is unfair, that is rightly would be construed as an attempt to suppress evidence with a guilty conscience. Having said that, I entirely agree with the critique of the conclusions arrived at by the ASI. In the 2-volume report, what matters is the last chapter, which is completely out of sync with the report, the narrative of the material excavated. It is highly imaginative. There is a quantum jump in terms of inferences drawn in order to prove that is begging the question, but they are out to prove it's almost custom made to the BJP government's political strategy, and the BJP was then in power, to prove that there was a temple beneath the structure, and that is the mother of all questions. So the demolition of the masjid is also justified if the masjid is constructed on a temple demolished historically by the...
Well, that's an interesting viewpoint. Whether we need to go into ask organizations like the ASI to solve our disputes or give reports and then follow them.
Otherwise also, see, Islam came 13th century. We had Hinduism earlier. Temples were there. Then mosques came up. Now, how far we can go further and keep on researching, keep on digging and finding out, well, this is Buddhist stupa on which there was a Hindu temple, there was a mosque, and there is a Gurdwara on it.
Well, possibly what you're suggesting is that whoever was in control of the political scenario at that point in time may have actually indulged in this or that.
And how are we going to solve these issues out of this?
Absolutely. We will continue our discussion on this. We are discussing the Lucknow bench verdict on the Ayodhya dispute. Anupam, I'll come back to you again. Is this the way to go back and depend on organizations like the ASI to resolve disputes?